The house on Willow Lane was perfect, or so I thought when I moved in last spring. It was a quaint 2-story cottage tucked at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac with ivy creeping up the brick exterior and a small backyard that caught the golden afternoon sun. The rent was suspiciously cheap for a place so charming, but the landlord, a nervous man named Mr. Hargrove, assured me it was just a matter of wanting a reliable tenant. I was 25, fresh out of a bad breakup, and desperate for a new start. The house felt like a gift. But gifts, as I'd learned, often come with strings. The first night, I noticed the smell. It was faint, like damp earth mixed with something sour, wafting from the basement. I chalked it up to old pipes or mildew, common in houses this age. I lit a candle, unpacked my boxes, and tried to make the place feel like home. By the third night, though, the smell was stronger, and I started hearing things. Soft thumps in the walls, like someone tapping a finger against drywall. I told myself it was the house settling, or maybe mice, but it didn't sound like mice. It was too deliberate, too rhythmic. I called Mr. Hargrove about it. He laughed it off and said old houses have personalities.
Check the basement if you're worried,
He suggested, but his voice had an edge like he didn't want me poking around. I decided to investigate anyway. The basement door was at the end of the hallway, its paint chipped and handle stiff. When I opened it, the smell hit me like a wave. Rotting fruit and something metallic. The stairs creaked as I descended, my phone's flashlight casting jittery shadows. The basement was cluttered with old furniture, boxes, and a rusty water heater. Nothing unusual, except for a small door in the far wall, barely 3 feet high, like something for a child's playhouse. And it was padlocked. I asked Mr. Hargrove about it the next day.
storage.
He said curtly.
Don't mess with it. It's just junk from the previous owners.
His tone made my skin prickle, but I let it go. I wasn't here to start trouble. Weeks passed and the noises grew bolder. Thumps turned into scratches, sometimes a faint shuffle, and always at night. I'd lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, convincing myself it was nothing. But then I started noticing other things. A glass I'd left on the counter would be in the sink when I woke up. My cereal box, always on the top shelf, would be on the counter, open. Once I found a single muddy footprint in the hallway, too small to be mine, and it was leading toward the basement door. I just scrubbed it away, heart pounding, telling myself I was imagining things. I wasn't. One night I woke up to the sound of whispering. It was faint, like a radio left on low, coming from the vent above my bed. I pressed my ear to the grate, holding my breath. The words were indistinct, but the voice was soft, almost childlike, and with a strange cadence, like someone reciting a poem they didn't fully understand. I tore the vent cover off, shining my flashlight inside. The duct was empty, but the air smelled like that basement stench, damp, sour, wrong. I couldn't sleep after that. I started staying up, sitting in the living room with every light on and a kitchen knife on the coffee table. I bought a cheap security camera and set it up in the hallway, pointed at the basement door. For 3 nights, nothing happened. On the 4th, the footage showed the door creaking open at 2:17 a.m. No one came out. No one went in. The door just opened, stayed that way for about 10 minutes, and then slowly closed. I called a locksmith the next morning. I didn't care about Mr. Hargrove's rules. I needed to know what was behind that padlocked door. The locksmith, a grizzled guy named Tony, showed up with a toolbox and a skeptical look.
You sure about this?
He asked, eyeing the basement.
Some things are locked for a reason.
I nodded, my mouth dry. The padlock snapped open with a clang. Tony pushed the little door, and it groaned on its hinges, revealing a crawl space barely tall enough to crouch in. The smell poured out, thick and nauseating. Tony gagged, handed me his flashlight, and said,
You're on your own, kid.
I didn't blame him. I almost turned back myself, but I had to know. I crawled inside, the flashlight beam shaking in my hand. The crawl space was narrow, lined with dirt and cobwebs. It stretched deeper than I expected, turning a corner into darkness. The walls were scratched, not randomly, but with patterns, swirls and lines, like someone had clawed them over years. And then I saw it. A nest. That's the only word for it. Blankets, torn clothes, and food wrappers were piled in a corner, surrounded by empty water bottles and a cracked mirror propped against the wall. In the mirror's reflection, I saw something move behind me. I spun around, heart in my throat, but no one was there. The air felt heavy, like someone was breathing just out of sight. I scrambled back towards the entrance, my flashlight catching a glimpse of something scrawled on the wall in smudged charcoal. I see you. I didn't sleep that night. I packed a bag, ready to leave, but I couldn't afford to break my lease, and I had nowhere else to go. I called the police instead. They searched the house, found nothing in the crawl space, no blankets, no wrappers, no writing. They said I was stressed, maybe hallucinating from lack of sleep, but I knew what I had seen. The next night, I set up the camera again, this time inside the basement, aimed at that crawl space door. I stayed awake, watching the live feed on my laptop. At 3:04 a.m., the door opened. A hand reached out, pale, thin, with nails bitten to the quick. It grabbed the edge of the door and pulled it shut. The camera went black. I didn't wait for morning. I grabbed my keys and drove to a motel, shaking so hard I could barely hold the wheel. I called Mr. Hargrove from the motel, screaming about the crawl space, the noises, the hand. He was silent for a long time before he spoke.
You weren't supposed to open that door,
He said, his voice low.
Some tenants, they don't leave.
What does that mean? I demanded. He hung up. I never went back to the house. I paid a moving company to get my stuff, but they said half of my boxes were already empty, like someone had gone through them. A week later, I got an email from Mr. Hargrove with my deposit refund and a single line: "She likes the house quiet." I checked the local news archives after that, something I should have done before moving in. There was a story from 15 years ago about a woman who'd lived in that house. She disappeared after her husband died, presumed to have run away. But neighbors reported seeing her shadow in the windows long after she was gone. They said she had always been strange, quiet, watching from behind the curtains. One article mentioned her obsession with the house, how she'd refused to leave even when the bank tried to foreclose. I don't know who or what was living in that crawl space. I don't know how long they'd been there, watching me moving my things, whispering through the vents. But I know one thing: I was not alone in that house. And whoever it was, they didn't want me to find them. So, to anyone watching this, a word of advice: if you move into a new place and it feels too good to be true, check the walls, check the vents, check the locks. Because sometimes the house you think is yours already has a guest.